Most men don't fail with women because they are bad, weak, or unworthy. They fail because they were taught comforting lies instead of dangerous truths. They were told to be honest when honesty weakens position. They were told to be emotional when emotion destroys leverage. They were told love is earned by giving more when in reality, it is earned by knowing when to withhold. This video solves one problem: why doing everything right still leads to rejection, disrespect, or abandonment. I wish someone had told me this early, before confusion hardened into bitterness, before effort turned into exhaustion. Men are taught a lie so polished, so socially rewarded, that questioning it feels immoral. They are told that women respond to goodness, that consistency is strength, that sacrifice earns affection, that if you show enough care, patience, and emotional availability, desire will naturally follow. This lie does not fail immediately. That is what makes it dangerous. It fails slowly, quietly, after investment has already been made, after dignity has already been traded for approval. I observed this pattern long before modern relationships gave it new language. In courts, in alliances, in diplomacy, those who offered loyalty freely were the first to be exploited. The same law governs intimacy. What is freely given is rarely valued. What is endlessly available becomes invisible. Yet men are raised to believe that visibility comes from exposure, that being seen means revealing everything, that trust is built by laying all cards on the table. They do not realize that in doing so, they strip themselves of leverage before the game even begins. A man enters a relationship believing effort is currency. He listens more, gives more, adapts more, apologizes more. He believes this makes him secure. What it truly makes him is predictable. Predictability is comfort, and comfort without tension breeds indifference. Desire does not grow in certainty, it grows in contrast. When everything about you is known, nothing about you is pursued. Women are not cruel for responding to this. They are human. Human nature does not reward what is guaranteed. I warned rulers that people love at their convenience, but fear at their cost. In romance, the parallel is clear. Attraction responds not to moral virtue, but to emotional gravity. The man who organizes his life around pleasing a woman signals that his center of gravity lies outside himself. That signal is read instantly, even if unconsciously. Men mistake attention for attraction. They believe that because a woman enjoys their presence, she desires their essence. These are not the same. Attention can be enjoyed without risk. Desire requires uncertainty. When you remove uncertainty through constant reassurance, constant presence, constant explanation, you collapse the emotional structure that creates longing. You think you are building safety, but you are dissolving mystery. This is where the lie becomes most destructive. Men are told that if they fail, it is because they did not give enough, did not communicate enough, did not try hard enough. So they double down on the very behavior that weakens their position. They become more accommodating, more emotionally transparent, more eager to fix every discomfort. They do not see that attraction is not a negotiation, and desire is not persuaded by compliance. I saw this in alliances between states. When one side showed excessive eagerness for peace, the other prepared for conquest, not because they were evil, but because opportunity invites action. In relationships, excessive eagerness invites testing, boundaries soften, respect erodes. The woman may not articulate it, but she feels it. The man who once seemed solid now feels malleable. What bends easily does not inspire confidence. The lie also teaches men to equate self-worth with acceptance. This is the most corrosive lesson of all. A man who believes he must be chosen to be valuable will always negotiate from weakness. He will tolerate disrespect, rationalize distance, excuse inconsistency, all in the name of preserving connection. In doing so, he trains others how to treat him. Power is never seized by those who beg for it. I am not speaking against kindness. Kindness without self-respect is submission disguised as virtue. Strength without cruelty is mastery. The dangerous lie confuses the two and convinces men that strength must be hidden to be loved. History proves the opposite. Those who lead are not loved because they serve. They are served because they lead. When a man believes that his role is to prove himself endlessly, he enters every interaction as a candidate, not as a chooser. He frames desire as something granted rather than something mutually discovered. This frame poisons everything. He waits for signals, overanalyzes responses, and fears silence. Silence, to him, becomes rejection. To a man who understands power, silence is simply space. Women do not lose interest because a man is insufficient. They lose interest because he abandons his frame in pursuit of theirs. The moment a man begins orbiting a woman's approval, he ceases to be a presence and becomes a reaction. Reaction is weak, direction is strong. This is the truth hidden beneath the lie. Attraction is not created by moral performance. It is created by self-possession. When you are rooted in your own purpose, when your attention is selective, when your presence is deliberate rather than desperate, you do not need to convince. Convincing is the language of those without leverage. Men are not rejected for being real. They are rejected for being unanchored. They are not dismissed for caring. They are dismissed for caring without limits. The lie tells them to give more. Reality demands they give better, less often, and never at the cost of their center. Men are taught to believe that emotion is proof of sincerity, that the depth of feeling they express is the same as the value they offer. They are encouraged to open their hearts early, to explain their intentions clearly, to make their emotional availability obvious so that no misunderstanding can exist. This teaching sounds noble, even progressive, but it misunderstands how attraction actually operates. Emotion, when revealed without restraint, does not build desire, it dissolves it. I learned long ago that power is not held by those who feel the most, but by those who decide when feeling is revealed. In politics, a ruler who exposes every fear invites attack. In relationships, a man who exposes every emotion invites familiarity without reverence. Familiarity may bring closeness, but it rarely sustains attraction. Attraction requires polarity, and polarity requires control. When a man treats emotion as currency, he spends it recklessly. He shares too soon, explains too often, reassures too much. He believes transparency creates trust, yet what it often creates is predictability. Predictability is not intimacy, it is routine. Routine does not awaken longing. Longing is born from the unknown, from the sense that there is more beneath the surface than what is currently revealed. Women do not seek emotional flooding. They seek emotional stability. There is a difference men rarely understand. Stability does not mean absence of feeling. It means presence of control. A man who can feel deeply without being ruled by those feelings signals strength. A man who lets his emotions dictate his actions signals volatility. Volatility is exciting only briefly. Over time, it becomes exhausting. I warned princes never to govern by impulse. The crowd loves passion in speeches, but fears it in decisions. The same paradox exists in attraction. Passion may ignite interest, but only restraint sustains it. When a man reacts emotionally to every shift in tone, every delayed message, every moment of uncertainty, he reveals that his internal order depends on external validation. This dependency weakens his position more than any rival ever could. Men often believe that if they clarify their feelings, confusion will disappear. They do not realize that confusion is not always a problem. Sometimes it is the very space where desire breathes. When everything is defined, labeled, and secured, the emotional air becomes stale. Attraction thrives in movement, not in containment. There is another error men make when they worship emotion. They mistake vulnerability for value. Vulnerability has become celebrated without context, divorced from timing and strength. Vulnerability expressed from a position of self-mastery deepens connection. Vulnerability expressed from insecurity burdens the listener. Women instinctively feel this difference, even when they cannot articulate it. One feels like intimacy. The other feels like responsibility. In power dynamics, the one who manages their internal state controls the exchange. If your mood rises and falls based on another person's behavior, you have surrendered authority over yourself. I taught that it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both, because fear rests in control. In attraction, control of self matters more than control of others. The man who cannot regulate his emotional responses cannot command respect, regardless of how sincere his feelings are. Emotion becomes most destructive when it is used to negotiate desire. Men confess feelings in hopes of securing commitment. They express intensity to accelerate closeness. They reveal attachment to prevent loss. This strategy fails because desire cannot be pressured into existence. When emotion is used as leverage, it exposes desperation rather than devotion. Women respond not to how much you feel, but to how you carry what you feel. If emotion spills over into anxiety, explanation, or reassurance seeking, it diminishes attraction. If emotion is held calmly, revealed selectively, and expressed without expectation, it enhances presence. Presence is magnetic. Need is repellent. The man who understands this stops performing his feelings. He stops narrating his inner world in real time. He allows silence to exist without filling it. He lets a woman wonder rather than informing her constantly. This is not manipulation. It is respect for the natural rhythm of attraction. Overexposure kills suspense. Suspense keeps attention alive. Emotion is not the enemy. Loss of emotional discipline is. A man who masters his emotions does not suppress them, he commands them. He chooses when to reveal warmth and when to remain composed. He does not punish silence with insecurity or reward distance with panic. He remains centered regardless of outcome. In every age, those who governed successfully understood one principle: control the self, and others respond accordingly. The same law governs attraction. When emotion rules you, you chase. When you rule emotion, you are pursued. If there is one truth men resist most, it is this: attraction is not created by presence alone, but by the tension between presence and absence. Men are taught that consistency is virtue, that availability proves sincerity, that being there at all times demonstrates value. Yet power has never lived in constant exposure. Power lives in selectivity. Mystery is not deception. It is the natural result of a man whose life is full beyond any single person. I watched courts crumble because rulers believed that appearing generous at all times would secure loyalty. Instead, it bred entitlement, The same law governs desire. When a man's attention is unlimited, it loses weight. When his attention is earned, it gains gravity. Women feel this instinctively. Scarcity signals value because it implies choice. A man who chooses carefully signals strength without speaking. Mystery does not mean playing games. It means refusing to narrate your entire inner world. It means allowing others to discover you over time rather than consuming you instantly. When everything about you is accessible, there is nothing left to pursue. Curiosity dies when answers are immediate. Attraction fades when imagination has no space to operate. Men often misunderstand female psychology because they judge it through logic rather than emotion. They ask why availability would reduce desire when availability seems kind, but attraction is not moral. It is responsive. It reacts to contrast, tension, and polarity. A man who is always present removes contrast. He flattens emotional peaks and valleys. What remains is comfort, and comfort alone does not sustain desire. Scarcity is not about disappearing. It is about prioritization. When a man's time is governed by purpose, work, discipline, and direction, his availability becomes naturally limited. This limitation communicates status more clearly than any boast ever could. A woman senses that she is engaging with a man who has a life, rather than a man seeking a life through her. I warned leaders never to make themselves too accessible to the crowd. Familiarity erodes authority. In relationships, excessive familiarity erodes attraction. When boundaries blur, roles collapse. The man becomes a companion rather than a force. Companionship is valuable, but it is not inherently magnetic. Mystery protects desire from decay. When a woman cannot fully predict your reactions, when she cannot fully map your emotional landscape, interest remains alive. This unpredictability should never come from chaos. Chaos breeds distrust. It should come from depth. Depth cannot be measured quickly, and what cannot be measured invites exploration. Men often fear that withholding availability will be interpreted as disinterest. This fear reveals insecurity, not care. A man secure in himself understands that interest does not require constant proof. He allows connection to breathe. He does not rush closeness or demand certainty. He trusts that what is valuable will not vanish because of space. Scarcity also restores balance. When a man gives endlessly, the exchange becomes unequal. Desire fades in imbalance. When attention flows both ways, attraction stabilizes. When attention flows only one way, it creates pressure, and pressure suffocates desire. A man who regulates his availability maintains equilibrium without confrontation. Female psychology responds strongly to the man who is present when he chooses to be and absent when his priorities demand it. This creates emotional rhythm. Rhythm sustains engagement. Flatness ends it. The man who understands this no longer fears being alone or misunderstood. He values alignment over approval. Mystery is also self-protection. When you reveal everything, you surrender all leverage. Knowledge grants power. In diplomacy, information was guarded carefully. In attraction, it should be revealed intentionally. This does not mean lying. It means pacing. Truth revealed too early loses impact. Truth revealed gradually gains weight. The greatest mistake men make is trying to secure attraction by eliminating uncertainty. They want guarantees. They want labels. They want clarity before desire has matured. This impatience collapses the dynamic. Desire must be allowed to grow in partial darkness. Light, too, early burns the fragile structure forming beneath the surface. A man who masters power, mystery, and scarcity does not chase interest. He creates conditions where interest emerges naturally. His presence feels chosen, not automatic. His absence feels noticeable, not punitive. His life remains centered on his own path, not on maintaining attraction. This is why women are drawn to men who seem slightly out of reach, not because they are cruel or indifferent, but because distance signals depth. Depth promises discovery. Discovery keeps desire alive. Men grow up believing love is the foundation and respect is the reward. This belief reverses reality and creates endless confusion. Love does not produce respect. Respect creates the conditions where love can exist without eroding. When a man seeks love first, he places himself beneath the judgment of another. When he commands respect first, he stands as an equal, and only equals can sustain desire over time. I observed this relentlessly in politics and power. Alliances formed on affection collapsed under pressure. Alliances formed on respect endured even when affection vanished. In relationships, the same law applies. A woman may feel affection quickly, but affection without respect is unstable. It shifts with mood, circumstance, and opportunity. Respect anchors attraction. Without it, love becomes conditional and fragile. Men are taught to fear loss above all else. This fear quietly governs their behavior. It makes them tolerate disrespect, accept inconsistency, and negotiate their boundaries away piece by piece. They believe that endurance proves devotion. In reality, endurance without limb, it proves fear. A man who fears loss more than dishonor will lose both, because he communicates that his self-worth is negotiable. Control is often misunderstood as dominance. True control is internal. It is the ability to remain composed when outcomes are uncertain. It is the capacity to walk away without anger, threats, or pleading. The man who can leave without resentment holds the strongest position because he is not trapped by the need to be chosen. This freedom is felt immediately, even when it is never spoken. Women test men not to humiliate them, but to locate strength. This testing is rarely conscious. It emerges through boundaries pushed, expectations challenged, emotions provoked. A man who collapses under these tests reveals instability. A man who responds calmly, firmly, and without emotional excess reveals structure. Structure signals safety. Safety sustains desire far longer than intensity ever will. Love that requires self-erasure is not love. It is dependency. When a man reshapes himself constantly to maintain harmony, he loses coherence. Incoherence destroys attraction. A man must remain aligned with his values even when it risks disapproval. Approval gained at the cost of self-respect poisons intimacy from the inside. Respect is built through consistency of self, not consistency of availability. When your words, actions, and boundaries align over time, respect forms naturally. When you say no without guilt, when you accept consequences without complaint, when you do not over-explain your standards, you establish authority over your own life. Authority invites admiration. Admiration feeds desire. Control also means refusing to argue your worth. The moment you begin justifying yourself, you have already conceded power. In courts, those who defended themselves excessively were assumed guilty. In relationships, those who explain themselves endlessly appear uncertain. Certainty is attractive. Calm refusal to negotiate identity is magnetic. Men often confuse emotional intensity with connection. They believe that dramatic declarations and sacrifices prove love. These gestures may create short-term closeness, but they erode long-term respect. Respect grows when a man does not abandon his direction for approval. Direction creates gravity. Gravity holds relationships together when emotions fluctuate. There is a harsh truth few men are told. Not everyone deserves access to you. Access is privilege. When access is granted freely, it is taken lightly. When access is earned through alignment and respect, it is valued. A man who protects his time, energy, and values signals that he considers himself worth protecting. Others take cues from this self-assessment. Control also manifests in silence. Silence when provoked. Silence when tempted to chase clarity. Silence when distance appears. Silence is not weakness when it is chosen. It is strength when it comes from self-trust. The man who can remain still while others react demonstrates mastery. Mastery commands respect without effort. Love, when it is healthy, is a consequence, not a pursuit. It emerges when two individuals meet without needing to complete each other. When need enters the equation, control vanishes. The man who needs less holds more power, not because he withholds affection, but because he is not ruled by it. This is the brutal truth men avoid because it demands responsibility rather than reassurance. You cannot negotiate attraction through sacrifice. You cannot secure love by surrendering your spine. You cannot maintain desire by fearing loss. Respect begins the moment you decide that your dignity is not the price of connection, and control is established the moment you accept that walking away is always an option. If these truths feel sharp, it is because illusion is comfortable and clarity is not. Most men are never taught how attraction actually works. They are taught how to behave in ways that make them agreeable, predictable, and easy to manage. Machiavelli never wrote to make men feel virtuous. He wrote to make them effective. What you have heard is not advice on manipulation, cruelty, or domination, but on self-mastery, the only form of power that cannot be taken from you. Women are not puzzles to be solved, conquered, or pleased at all costs. They are human, governed by the same laws of power, perception, and emotion that rule courts and kingdoms. When you abandon these laws in the name of comfort, you lose both attraction and respect. When you understand them, you stop chasing outcomes and start commanding presence. Attraction is not earned through sacrifice, but through structure. Emotion is not valuable because it is expressed, but because it is controlled. Mystery is not created by deception, but by depth. Respect is not demanded, but established through boundaries. And love, when it appears, is not something you cling to, but something that grows in the space between two complete individuals. The greatest mistake a man can make is believing he must become less to be loved. Power begins when you refuse this lie. When you stand rooted in your purpose, unafraid of loss, unwilling to negotiate your dignity, you no longer seek validation. You become the standard by which connection is measured. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Those who govern themselves are never truly powerless. In love, as in life, the man who masters his nature never needs to beg, never needs to chase, and never needs to fear abandonment, because his strength does not come from being chosen, but from choosing himself.